Welcome back to the Tech Connect podcast. I'm Paul Farnsworth, and today we're going to be talking about something which should affect every single person listening, whether you're hunting for a role right now or you're just keeping your options open while you're happily employed. We're talking about job searching.
Yes.
And how many jobs have you searched for, Nick?
Thousands and thousands and
thousands. Thousands and thousands, yeah. The reason Nick has searched for thousands and thousands of jobs is that Nick is a data science manager here who's deep in the world of agentic AI and something called Model Context Protocol,
yes.
which is we acronize that, don't we?
Yes, it's MCP.
Is acronized a word? Did I just make that up?
I don't know. I've only ever just used acronyms.
Okay, all right. We're going to say there's an acronym. MCP is the acronym, and we're going to be talking about MCPs a little bit more in this podcast. It sounds like science fiction, but it's really part of the infrastructure that's reshaping the way AI works. So, Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Okay. So before we get into the context of this, as a data science manager, do you organize your home life just like you would at work?
I try to.
Okay.
It's a little bit different because the data at home isn't like the data we have here. So the data at home is a lot of, old paperwork, or maybe it's dog toys and clothing. I have a lot of boxes within boxes, if that helps explain,
Boxes within boxes are good. You can digitize a lot of things, but you can't digitize dog toys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we digitize them in the sense that my dog likes to tear them up a lot.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
So then we just put the scraps in there, and then
the scraps in there.
It finally becomes so minute, they become like little bytes of data.
Oh, they're little itty bitty bytes, which is excellent. So
Yes.
I know you think about bytes of data a lot. Now, the other question I have for you is, if you were going to set up a database, do you have a preferred database server?
Not really, although I have been getting into personal cloud databases. So ones that aren't really like related to cloud services from major financial institutions or major tech institutions. I like to kind of have it. I would really like to have it in my home where it's like, oh, it's still the cloud, but it's my personal cloud.
When do we get to the point when no one has to think about a database anymore, that it just self-organizes?
I don't think we're ever going to get to that point.
No, I don't think we are either. So
sorry.
No, that's okay.
But also, I want to be able to say that so I can have my job here in 10 years.
That's also true. So, Nick, I keep hearing the same frustrations from tech professionals. I know I'm qualified, but I can't get past the robots or the AI, however you want to frame it. What is happening in the job market right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of actually transitions that are happening here in the job market. The first one, I think, is one that's actually been here for a while, which is keywords. So a lot of the times when companies are searching for candidates, they're looking for specific things on the resume, like do you have Python skills? Do you have Java skills? And if you don't have the exact keyword on your resume, a lot of the times you're not going to make it through the ATS systems that a lot of these companies are using. And then that leads to what we kind of call the apply black hole, right? Where you apply to a job and you never hear anything back. And that seems to be the real problem amongst the job seekers. Now, what they're doing in response is tailoring resumes rather extremely so that they can get through those ATS systems. And it's just only been more amplified by AI and the use of large language models for scanning resumes.
Yeah, I mean, and I can also see on the other side, we're talking about job seekers, but if you're a recruiter and you need to have a system filtering, you're going to take the same job description that I've just used to tailor my resume to tailor the filters on the other side. So we're effectively creating a situation where everybody is sort of starting to game the system.
Yep. No, I would probably kind of equate it to the terminology of it's turtles all the way down, right? So once you find the one turtle that it's sitting on top of, you're going to go down to the next one, and that's where AI comes in. I'm going to try and modify my resume, and then you're going to try and respond to me modifying my resume by filtering my resume out.
Do you think this starts to dehumanize the process of starting to look for a job? Because at one point you'd write a letter. I mean, I'm going to age myself here. You'd write a letter and send it in. Maybe you get a response back, but it's a lot quicker and more automated now. It seems like we're taking some of the human out.
Yeah, no, and I think that this actually hits like a huge pain point a lot of the times when you talk to candidates is they can't even get past this ATS system to try and at least, go to the company and say, hey, here's why you should hire me. And that's like a big problem, because then these applicants get really discouraged and they're like, why am I even looking for a job if I can't even sit down and have that conversation, even with just a recruiter?
Yeah, and this connects to something we've been hearing from our technologists. 68% of technologists have said they don't actually trust AI in the hiring process. And in theory, we are a community of technologists that trying to improve these things and make it better. Shouldn't there be a scenario where we've built that technology to actually help match better to roles?
Exactly. Well, and I think that that's the part that's been lost. I think a lot of the times when people think about how AI can actually impact the job hiring process, it's all around productivity and how many people can we get through the system, and how many jobs can we get out there and fill the role in this amount of time and short amount of time. And it's all about it's about efficiency, and it's not about creating the friction that allows for people to get into roles where they actually will make an impact.
Do you think, I'm going a smaller side around, because we're still using resumes at the core of the apply process, and lots of platforms will take a resume, they break the skills up. Do you think you start with a resume and ask AI to improve, or is AI starting to actually produce a new style of resume because we're using it to begin with, not to modify?
Yeah, no, I think when we talk about how AI affects the whole process here, it's like you see a lot of the times that these implementations are failing for that specific reason, that AI is coming in and it's trying to modify these resumes based off of the knowledge base that it has. But you have to remember the knowledge base that it has is everything that humans have done over the last years on the internet, right? So when they're coming in and they're looking at what actually makes resumes successful, it's looking at the ATS systems that have been in place, those keywords that we're talking about that created the black hole era in the first place.
Do you think that I've been reading a little bit about non-human readable context in resumes that's designed to trick AI? Should we be doing that?
The ethicist in me says no. Now, if you were asked the maniacal part of me, then probably a little bit.
Probably yes. Okay. Yeah. Are you a white font on white paper kind of trickery, or do you think you keep it in plain sight?
I think that if you can keep it in plain sight, it actually should count towards your qualifications if you can do it in a way that it's like, I'm being upfront about it. I think personally, like if you were to go to the white font on the white page, like, yes, if it genuinely helps you find a role, then that's okay. But I wouldn't say I'm an advocate for that.
Okay. So we've established that there's a lot of technology on both sides. Technologists are using and modifying resumes, keywords, trickery, white font on white paper. But on the same side, companies are trying to help recruiters filter through the noise also, and that creates that kind of that self-reinforcing circle of behavior.
Yes.
But what can AI do to actually help this? And what's different between AI that we have been using and where we're headed in 2026?
Sure. So, I mean, when we think about when AI first kind of came onto the scene, it wasn't really called AI. It was really called, it came under a lot of names. First, it was, predictive analytics, and then it became machine learning. And now AI is just the latest kind of spinoff that we hear from it. So when we think about what AI has done in the past, a lot of the times it was, predicting whether or not this candidate would be a good fit. And that meant modifying all of this unstructured data of text into one single number, or maybe a Likert scale from 1 to 5. How great of a fit is this candidate? How well would they do? And now what we're kind of seeing more is this implementation that came out with LLMs, where it's able to kind of at least bridge some of that gap, where now we're not having to translate from unstructured text into a number, even though that's kind of what it's doing on the back end, which is kind of funny. But the key here— a
lot of numbers.
Yes, a lot of numbers on the back end, a lot of numbers. But the difference is that the computer with these loms are now able to actually understand those numbers and speak in our language, coming back to, written words.
So I think if you're not familiar with an MCP server, we're going to have a kind of go at trying to define very loosely why it's important. And I think a basic framework to understand why MCP servers start to become a useful utility is that we live in two worlds right now. We live in a world where classic search has got very good at crawling the internet in near real time and consuming all the information and letting you find it.
Yes.
But generative AI tends to be built on more static models, and the data you feed in is building the service from there. And at some point, we have to bridge the two worlds, because if you're looking for a job and you're wanting to use AI to help, you can't live in a static model that's just been trained.
Yeah.
You want to leverage what is happening in traditional search, but in that AI world. So just explain why MCP servers help bridge that gap.
Sure. So, I mean, you kind of touched on the main point, right? With LLMs, like their limitation is they are really good at predicting the next word in a sentence. But they're built on these stagnant data sets. And the problem with that a lot of the times is that you get into these situations where the model can hallucinate based off of the information that it has. If you were to ask a certain question about, what was the news that happened 2 weeks ago, it may not know, or it may just give you an answer that it confidently states this is the right answer, but it's not. What MCP servers allow us to do is basically give the LLM a tool that it can use to access more accurate and real-time information. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with our MCP server.
Yeah, so Dice has built an MCP server that connects in near real time into our jobs index. And that allows you, once it's connected with your AI of choice, to start leveraging it. But just explain, how do I use that? And what's the experience of job searching now different if I pick to go down the route of connecting AI and an MCP server into that jobs index?
Yeah. So the way that it works now, at least, is we're trying to meet the candidates where they are. I think it should be fair to say that a lot of folks out there are using large language models to help them in their job search. I mean, we just talked about how LLMs are used to modify resumes. So the way that we're trying to come at it with the MCP server to enable job seekers to find more roles is really give them access to our site where they're looking for a job, which is on these LLM platforms. So the way that we kind of have it connect into our jobs platform is you can have a user come through and say, hey, I have my resume. I'm looking for jobs that fit my resume. Can you help me out? And now, instead of it having to sit there and be like, oh yeah, I can help you by just modifying your resume a bit and might be tailored to these types of roles, it can now go onto our Dice job search index and say, hey, I went on a Dice and I found 6 different roles that I think that you are a good fit for based off of the resume that you provided.
I think the other thing that is useful is in the context of a job search. The Agentic AI platforms have spent a lot of time making sure that you can build some context. Now, I know at some point they run out of tokens and it's like you lose your advisor. But the ability to negotiate backwards and forwards and brainstorm a little bit with these agents becomes incredibly powerful. It also starts to solve some of the problem that we've been tackling as an industry for a long time, which is the job I have now and the job I'm applying for may not be the same. And how do I bridge the gap between, I may want to progress in my career, but it's hard to find a match if all the matching technology is doing is taking your current resume and matching you to a job which meets you where you're at versus one that might be in the future. And this gives you some tools to play around with to help manage that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where we're trying to actually, I think, head with this first step of an MCP server. So what we're really talking about isn't just a chatbot anymore. We're talking about agentic AI, something that can plan, that can execute, that can work with you as an advisor to help get you to where you want to be. And so you bring up this point of, hey, I want to move into this direction. What you can do is you can start building up an agent that maybe monitors the market to find the skills that you need to go out and get jobs like these. So instead of it just being, I want to apply to a job right now, it could be, here's my resume. I'm looking for these types of jobs. Can you go use this MCP server and find me what kind of skills I need to upskill myself with in order to get there?
I know we keep hearing the word agentic and agent and all this sort of stuff. I come from a telco background. An agent, when I started my career, was someone who used to patch you between different extension numbers. What does agentic and agent, what is that like in AI now? Yeah,
so it really just kind of, the way you can think about it is an LLM or a chatbot that can do more with a suite of tools, with a memory, and with proper instructions. And so the way that we kind of break it down is actually into those three things. You give the LLM what we would call a system prompt, and it says, hey, this is the role that you're going to play. You give it access to a memory system, whether it's just the previous chat you've had or a database, something along those lines. But then you also give it a suite of tools. Maybe you want it to be able to search the web. Maybe you want to give it access to Dice through an MCP server. And you give it all of these tools so that when you're actually having a conversation, it's not just going to hallucinate or give you, a non-deterministic answer every single time. It's going to be able to give you repeatable, actionable steps that can get you from point A to point B, rather than just being a very nice chatbot that will be very sycophantic and tell you you're the best person in the world.
Perfect. Look, we tend to talk to a technology-oriented audience, so the term MCP probably hasn't put a lot of people off. But there's also a set of people who may not want to or understand kind of some of that terminology. Just describe what an MCP server looks like inside, say, ChatGPT, because it doesn't show up as an MCP server. What does it look like in there?
Well, I mean, when we talk about MCP server, really what we're talking about is a standard protocol, right? So think of it as the USB-C for AI. And really what that translates to is when you go into these chatbots, it's become so simple now where you just kind of put in a little URL and it says, here's the connector to this MCP server. And then you enable it on the tools site, and then it has access to all of the suites of tools that you give the MCP server access to.
And you may not realize this, but you're probably using an MCP server already. A lot of the interfaces have a catalog of tools. If you look through that catalog of tools, whether it's a travel site or an airline or whatever it happens to be, they're using that protocol to effectively connect you to more real-time data.
Absolutely. The tools that you're seeing now on things like Claude and ChatGPT, where they're talking about connectors and you can connect to your Google Drive, you can connect to your calendar, you can connect to those sites. Those are basically using the MCP protocol to make it so that you have access to all of these suites of tools. And it makes your experience with agents a lot more beneficial to the user.
Now, we're going to brainstorm here for a second.
Yes.
To see where the future goes. I've become absolutely fascinated by Neo robots. Did you see the Neo robot announcement? It's a full humanoid robot that, in theory, does autonomous tasks for you. Do you think we get to a point where there's a fleet of temporary robots you can send to go do your job interview for you while you're doing other things? I mean, you could interview with lots of companies and never leave your home. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea, Paul, and I wish you the best on that adventure, but...
Okay. All right. You still think that there's going to be a need for the human to actually show up to the interview?
Absolutely. When I think about how we use AI, I think the most important thing for me is really just the understanding that AI should be used to help make more human connection, right?
Yep.
Like, so when you talk about these Neo robots, like I would like a Neo robot to go and do my laundry for me so that I can spend more time doing something
that's one of its cases. That's what it does.
Well, I'm thinking going from there to a job interview. I feel like if I sent my robot to do my job interview, I think that the company that's trying to hire me would think that maybe I'm not going to be the most serious candidate.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. So let's just talk a little bit about not sending your robot for the interview, but what can you actually use these things for?
Yeah, so a lot of the things that you can use them for is actually where the industry is now heading for 2026, and it's around workflow automation. And so the way that I would kind of describe it is you can set up this entire workflow that just runs automatically. Like maybe you want a morning job digest like automation. So every time you sit down at your computer, your agent is running in the background. It says, "Hey, I know you're looking for a job still. Here's 5 new jobs that I found when I searched through using Dice MCP." Another thing that you can kind of do is continuous market monitoring. So what that kind of looks like is maybe you're wanting to see our senior machine learning engineering roles opening up in your area. And maybe you use that as kind of an indicator for yourself to be, okay, I'm not going to look for jobs right now, but I'm just going to track that market to make sure that I know where it's going and I'm best prepared for those kinds of things. And then another way you can kind of use it too, again, is just kind of seeing what skills are important, right? Seeing what are the ideal things that companies are looking for over time. Because it may be that you want to move into these areas like we talked about earlier. Maybe you want to move into a more managerial role from an individual contributor. And so maybe what you're wanting to kind of go ahead and do is like, okay, what skills do I need? Or maybe you can do the opposite, which is, show me Python roles that don't require me to be on call, right? So really kind of personalizing the experience, I think, is what I'm kind of trying to get at here.
Yeah, I think that personalization and the support are incredibly helpful. I know I was just talking to a colleague around best practices in job search. And, I think sometimes, particularly if you're out now looking for a new role, a little support's helpful. And I'm not suggesting that having a network of peers that are helping you or keeping you accountable, you can replace that directly with AI. But I think there's some middle ground there where it can actually be almost like somebody that assists you with that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's, I think, like the main point, I think, where I think agentic AI can actually really benefit us.
Now, are you with all of this said, and we may be creating lots of thoughts for you about how you use all this. That it's like any tool. You've got to know when to use it and when enough is enough.
Yes.
I think you've got to be a little careful, because one of the things we are seeing is these kinds of tools mean that you are able to scale potentially your job search. I do think being specific with the AI and making sure that you're applying for jobs that you really have a match for or you're interested in. Otherwise, you risk just putting nonsense out.
Absolutely. And I think that this is kind of the crux of the argument of, when does AI stop being a benefit? And yes, it does allow job seekers to scale up their search, but when you lose that like sense of identity for yourself and you're just kind of adding to, what would be, I guess you could call the term as like AI slop, or like those things that like no one really wants, that's where you need to kind of really sit down and think about this from like, I wouldn't call it an ethical point of view, but more so just kind of like, where does the benefits end? And the benefits should end when you lose that true identity for yourself.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing that software developers in particular and technologists are aware of is this is not a replacement for quality control.
Absolutely.
I could easily see where you create an MCP server that does exactly what you said, wakes up in the morning, looks for roles, creates resumes that are tailored and a cover letter, and then starts to automate that sending off. But you still have to make sure that you're doing the quality check in there, because things that are unplanned occur all the time in these kinds of situations.
Absolutely. And that's the point where I think, you hear these concepts of human in the loop, right? So human in the loop always means that, you're going to have an agentic system that will do some certain functions, but there always needs to be a point where it's checking in with you to make sure that you're avoiding those situations that may not be very optimal.
Those situations. Okay,
Yes.
Crystal Ball 2030. Is Neo now going for job interviews? What do you think?
Crystal ball 2030. No, I think Neo now is walking to the job interview, and you might have 3 people that are trying to kick it to see if it'll react.
I see. Fair enough. I get it. Okay. All right. What do you think in 2030? How has this technology evolved and changed job seeking?
So I think what it really kind of comes down to is it really brings out this need for human skills, for soft skills. You're starting to see a reemergence of that being very important, because now you have a smaller barrier to entry for technical skills. But now there, in addition to those soft skills, so maybe it's talking to someone on a podcast, or maybe it's presenting in a meeting, having those interpersonal skills is going to be, I think, very critical for whether or not you're successful or not in your career. However, in addition to all of the technical and soft skill development, you're also now having to see an increase in AI fluency, right? AI is going to permeate your job function, whether you don't have to be building the models, I guess is what I'm saying, but it will be a part of your job function. In McKinsey's report that they just put out, I think they said since 2023 to 2025, there was a 7% increase in the desire for AI fluency among candidates.
Yeah. Wow. That's So, I mean, I think it's going to be part of everybody's daily life. Okay. So, to paraphrase an old saying, every long journey starts with small steps to begin with. maybe you haven't heard of MCP servers before and you're starting to understand how powerful they can be. What are a couple of practical things that I can do leaving from this conversation to start using that technology right now?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is to use our MCP server, because that way you'll actually get some whole experience with actually implementing the technology into these chatbots that I'm sure a lot of our listeners are actually already using. And the other thing I would suggest is really just start to experiment with AI in your workflows.
Yep.
Whether that's something small, like setting up a routine that runs every morning to maybe just get you the news so you know what's going on in the AI space. Or it could be something more complex where you're actually building out these agentic systems. I guess what I'm trying to say is really like you just need to go for it. Like start experimenting with AI. We're in such an experimental spot in the industry that if you start now, there's no way that you're not going to see dividends in the future, regardless of what you're doing.
Yep. I think that's absolutely right. Well, Nick, thank you so much for talking a little bit about data science and MCP servers and agents, even though you dismissed my Neo idea. I won't hold that against you. I think just to wrap this up, I think this is one of those emerging tools. It's not a replacement. There's still basic things you need to do when you start looking for a job, preparation that you need to do, research on the company, making sure your culture and your skills really do fit. I do think this provides an opportunity to automate some of the grind that you might find in your job search. More than that, it also provides a more sophisticated way to use the tools that we have and show, as you said, that you have a little bit of AI savvy coming into the role. So as with all these things, you have to go experiment a little bit, find what works, find best practices. But I think we're moving to a point where AI is going to be part of everybody's job search. It's not going to be the only thing you use, but it really is going to start to be inclusive in that process. So we're here for you as you think about finding a role. Our jobs index and MCP server will assist with the agent of your choice, and have fun and go find a great new job.